Hello, my name is Ike McKinley, and this is NOS 220, Linux System Administration. For this lesson, we'll talk about how to get started using Linux. We'll start by looking at how to download a copy. Then we'll move on to the installation process itself, including the basics of partitioning and file system layout. Finally, we'll be discussing package selection and the sorts of Linux systems that can be set up using the basic installers. Before you can install, of course, you need to download a copy of Linux and burn it to suitable install media. Here you can see a list of several potential sites where you should be able to retrieve a copy of an ISO image that you can burn to CD or DVD. Note that if you're installing a virtual machine, you should be able to simply mount the image directly. Once you've done so, you should be able to boot to the screen shown here, which will give you a brief list of options. Though we'll only be using the install option today, it's worth taking a moment to discuss some of these other choices. Understanding the boot process is critical to administering a Linux system. Once a system is booted, analysis and recovery options expand enormously. Conversely, a system that fails to boot is much harder to work with. Most Linux systems use a boot manager called Grub. The boot manager is loaded from a file on the /boot directory, which then loads the rest of the system. The important thing to remember here is that the boot directory must be visible to Grub, and so must be formatted either as ext2, 3, or 4, without RAID or LVM. Now, you probably don't know what those are yet, but we'll get to them in a little bit. For now, take a look at option F4, Linux Rescue. This allows you to use the boot CD to access a system that can no longer boot itself. In CentOS, it will automatically detect and mount any CentOS installations on the hard drive so that you can perform repair and recovery. This can be extremely useful in recovering from hard drive damage or from a system that has problems with the Grub installation itself. In order for Linux to use a hard drive to store data, that drive has to be partitioned. The partition is simply a division of the disk that is marked to hold a certain kind of file system or virtual hardware. The simplest partitioning scheme is to simply place the entire drive in a single partition and format that with one of the basic file systems. But most modern file systems use multiple partitions with swap, LVM, and or RAID. A swap partition, for instance, is simply a partition that acts as virtual memory, although it is considerably slower. What are LVM and RAID? Linux can designate certain partitions to act as virtual hardware. RAID uses those partitions to form virtual hard drives, which can then be partitioned just like a real hard drive. RAID is used to combine partitions from different physical drives, either for performance or redundancy. LVM, on the other hand, creates virtual logical volumes, which can then be combined or split into different partitions while a system is running. LVM allows the user to easily resize partitions on a running system. A file system is simply a way to organize data storage within a partition. Linux can use several file systems, but the most common file systems are ext2, 3, and 4. These are all variants of the original ext file system that came with Linux when it first debuted. The last two, ext3 and ext4, are usually used in all but the largest enterprise systems. One of these is then designated the root file system, which means it's the file system that all the other file systems are connected to. And all the other file systems are then mounted in various subdirectories of the root system. Our next step is to choose the packages that we should install on our new system. Although Linux is usually described as an operating system, most distributions include a complete suite of server and desktop applications as well, either on the install media or available in online repositories. As this can run to hundreds or even thousands of packages, it's usually best to decide just which role the system will serve and let the default packages be installed automatically. If changes are needed, the package management system, in this case RPM and Yum, makes it easy to install any extra software. So here we see the choices for which roles are available, and we'll just choose desktop and proceed. The machine will then assemble a list of packages to be installed. We wait a bit, and finally the system is ready to install. At this point we can review our previous decisions and make any changes we like, but everything here looks good, so we'll proceed to the actual install and simply wait for it to complete before rebooting the system. So, this was a quick introduction to the installation procedure. We took a look at how the system boots, partitioning, LVM and RAID, and how we can select some basic package configurations. Next time, we'll be moving on to basic system processes and how to manage them.